Hey girlies, it's Dr. Sheppard. Welcome back to the Balancing It All podcast. Today is a subject that it's been on my heart for a really long time. Um, but honestly, I just really haven't wanted to put it out there in the world. Um, just for my own like fear of judgment and what people are going to say. But then again, I feel like there may be a lot of people out there that feel the way that I feel. And so and maybe it will lead me to some different answers. And, maybe that's why I need to say this, and just kind of talk through some of my reasonings and, just hopefully reach an audience of people that understands and feels me and can offer me some advice. So I titled this podcast, Why I Don't Go to Church Anymore. And it's kind of one of those like, interesting like titles of like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. What's up with that? And I really like there's a lot of things that have kind of led up to this, but I want to say from the start, this is just my opinion and my experience. And so a lot of you may be in a different area and maybe have different experiences. And that's I hope so. I hope you do. But this is just kind of my take on this and my experience and just kind of my thought process. But I grew up going to church. Like, I mean, every single Sunday. It was what we did. We got up, we went to church. We went to church on Sunday nights, and we did youth group and went to church camp. Like I grew up with a great, background going to church. But you learn the Bible stories, like you learn the stuff, and you have youth group, and just kind of play some games and talk about some stuff. um and then you go to college and you don't really go to church for a while because you're at college, and came back home and still continued to just attend church because honestly, because that's just what I was raised to do. I mean, like, you just go to church. And my husband, like, we met, our parents were friends, and we met, they went to church together, so we knew each other. But we kind of met through them going to church. And so it was just like he was raised in his uncle is a pastor, his grandpa is a pastor. So that's, same thing. His family grew up going to church, and that's what you do. And, looking back now, I feel that I was never taught how to have a relationship with with the Lord personally. I just went to church and I thought that was what it was. I didn't understand. I mean, yeah, did I say prayers? And I mean, yeah, we all do, but like, to really, really have a relationship that will carry you on and carry you through tough times. And, it's like, oh, when tough times come, it's like, oh yeah, I got to pray about that. But I was never really taught how to deal with hard things and how to have a personal relationship with the Lord. And so, we had our kids and we would take them to church, because we wanted them to be raised in church. And, it was the same thing. It was like, you learn the Bible stories, and you as the parent need to volunteer in the church, and you have to volunteer in the kids section. And so you have to balance having small kids and trying to get, your service in and attend children's service because you have to work because your kids want to go there. And I think that's when I really started to have some frustration with church, because I felt like it was a job. They assigned you a day to work, and, never mind, you work 5 days of the week and you have to be there, or you have to find somebody to sub for you. And, then you're trying to spend your extra time going to your own service. And it was really stressful on me. And it was just like one more thing I had to do. I wasn't getting much out of, my kids were having fun in children's church, but like, that's not my love language. Like, serving in a children's service is like my worst nightmare. Like I hated it. I see kids all day long in my office, but I'm not your babysitter. And it was just like babysitting. And so, then you kind of just go and you do that, and then you don't attend service on your own. And so, this, once my kids kind of got out of that age where um, they could go, like, you didn't have to serve, and they could go to like an actual children's church, not just like the babysitting one, got better. But, I just noticed as my kids got busier, life got busier, and we had a really hard time finding um, where we fit in. And, we had went to church with, you know, my parents and his parents were all at the same church. And we had a very, very core group of friends, initially a small group when our kids were little. And they were kind of, a rock of people. I mean, and they were like good people, with normal kids, normal lives, normal problems, where we felt like we could really connect with them. And as we kind of got a little bit older, a couple of the families, like we were done having kids, some of them were still having kids. One family got relocated. So that got kind of hard because it kind of broke the group up, and we never really found anybody we could connect with in our same demographic of life. And so that was really hard for us. And so we just started noticing we were going less and less. And it was still important to us, but I just never felt like we belong at this church. And so, we had moved and we had tried another church. And the kids loved the youth group. It was a wonderful youth group. They would go relentlessly every week. The kids were kids from their school. The youth pastor was young. He was fun. And that was great because it was like, okay, we feel like we kind of found our spot. I know Nate and I didn't really feel like we knew the people there, but we never really established friendships. But our kids had friends there, and that's really what mattered to us at that time. Then the youth pastor left. And so then they decided they would just have parents that would run the youth group. And I see this over and over. And I want to tell you, for those of you, I don't know if anybody's in church ministry that's listening to me, but having your parents run small groups in like a high school youth group, having the parents of the kids run it is a terrible idea. Like, my kids felt like they could not share, they could not talk more freely. The kids kind of started not going as much. Their friends started not going as much because just the whole vibe of it changed. And having their friends' parents there, it was just like a vibe killer. And it really didn't work. So then they stopped attending because they just didn't care for it anymore and felt like the stuff that they talked about, they couldn't really talk about those things anymore. And so, so then it was like, okay, now what are we going to do? So we moved again and started attending our old church, and the kids just did not vibe with the small group or with the youth group. It was, they didn't really have friends from their school going. And so it was some homeschooled kids and kids that weren't really their friends. And it was also being led by older people. And, some parents were still involved, and there was parents that were part of the ministry program. And that's really difficult. And I feel like it's very hard. Like, kids deal with a lot these days, and we have to armor them with the truth of situations. And I felt like I didn't get a lot of that in youth group. And I know my kids definitely weren't getting it, because it's hard to talk about non-biblical things in a biblical way. But if you don't have these conversations with your children, then they are going to not know how to handle them when they come up. And so, we have a great relationship with our kids, and, really preemptively talked through things ahead of time. Just talked about alcohol. We talked about just social media. We talked about, my husband's a middle school principal. We talk a lot about social media. Things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do, things that can come back to haunt you, and how to use social media appropriately. And so it's these kids are dealing with real life stuff. And I just felt like they're not getting any kind of guidance. Just telling a kid like, okay, yeah, don't drink, don't drink underage. Like, you can't just say that to a kid. You have to give them specific reasons and things to do and ways to handle situations. And you have to talk about things that are hard. And I think, thinking about how I was feeling with my kids, I think I realized that's where I was feeling issue was nobody was talking to me about the things that were hard in my life, the real life stuff. I mean, yeah, you'll get a lecture on divorce, you'll get a lecture on pornography, you'll get a lecture on, and those touch people, and those are super, super helpful for those people. But, we don't talk about how difficult it is to be a parent, and how difficult it is to be a parent in this day and age, and how difficult it is to try to raise Christian kids and not keep them homeschooled and put them in real life situations, and how to handle those things. And we have to talk about this stuff, and we have to empower parents in a way that, they feel like they can talk to their kids about situations before bad stuff happens. And sometimes the kids don't want to talk to the parents. They want to talk to somebody else. I do think youth pastors are great, because a lot of times youth pastors do have some real world experience, and they can relate to them because they are younger. But I don't know that they're having these tough conversations about things that happen in these kids' lives that are tough to deal with socially, emotionally. The social media aspect, the just underage drinking, sex. How do you talk, and standing up there and saying, well, these things are against the Bible. Like, these kids don't care when they're put in a situation where they're at a party and people are drinking, and they don't want to drink, but they want to be at the party. But, what do you tell your kid to do? And how do you arm them with these situations? And, I just felt like there was no support for my age of person. They would cater to the little kids. And then, you had adult, your kids are grown, and you've got, when you're saying, you've got Sunday night church, and you've got Wednesday night church, and you've got, during the day groups, like, that does not work for the average person. Like, we just didn't make the time. I mean, I don't want to say we didn't have time, but it wasn't a priority to us, because we didn't feel that we had a place that we fit. And B, it was, with everything that these kids juggle these days, having one more thing to do is not what they need. And so, there's a big push with having kids sit in big service and then doing something later, because there was research that said, kids don't sit in big church later on. I don't know that I agree with that. Yeah, they should learn how to sit in a regular service, but if they're not coming back for a youth service, then they need something during that same time that feeds them and teaches them the same principles in a way that it's going to relate to them. If you're talking about marriage on the pulpit, they're going to tune out, because they're not ready for that stuff. They don't want to hear it. Oh, well, they will be ready someday. Okay, but if they're in a small group and they're talking about what to do on Snapchat, when people are sending nudes around, like, let's talk real life stuff here. I mean, I can go through a million examples and stuff that my kids deal with on a daily basis that is, yes, you have to parent your own kids. I 100% know you have to sit down, but there's not a lot of support for parents or teens in these tough situations. And it's always these black or white, like, oh, you shouldn't have premarital sex. But understand, kids are. And I know that because I talk to my kids, and I know what's going on with kids these age. My husband's a middle school principal. We know what goes on. and we are able to sit down and talk to our kids, but it's also like, you can't stand up there and just say, well, just don't do it. Okay, let's move on. Let's play a game. We have to have these tough conversations and let the kids have a space where they can talk. And so, a lot of it is just, like I said, my personal opinions, my personal experience. And there's no answer. Like, it's probably, a lot of you are probably like, well, yeah, they do that. You just don't know, or you don't go to that church. I I just see it more and more with my kids and my kids' friends that they're not going to church. And COVID was a big part of it. Everything came online. Kids want stuff virtually. They don't go to things. There just is, it is a lot of people struggle with the church establishment, and they struggle with, like, the judginess and the all or nothing. And, I see it. I'm on both sides. I'm a Christian, but I also see it as an outsider, as a realist of like what goes on. And it's, I understand why people have pushback with the church. And, I just, sometimes I feel like it's a show, that people show up to be seen, to check that box, and to, make a, oh, I made a connection. I was there. I was sitting in church. And, you sit there and you look at people and you're like, yeah, but I know what you're like in your real life. And you're trying to present as this perfect person, and you're not. And it's, it's just hard when people, we need to be honest about how difficult our real lives are, and how you don't have to be perfect. And, like, I think that's what these kids need to hear. Like, you're going to make mistakes. Jesus loves you anyway, but, here's how we navigate these situations. Here's what the Bible says, but here's how you navigate this in an easier way. But it also, can still lead you not down a bad path. And I think we can strangle religion around our kids, and then they pull away from it later on in life because they just feel like it's been thrown down their neck. And they're not really taught at a young age how to have a deep relationship with the Lord. And the church doesn't matter. It's just a building. It's just people. Your relationship with the Lord matters, but it also, it's, how do you form that? How do you form that as a 17-year-old? And, I feel like I don't have the tools to then teach my kids how to have the tools. So, I wanted someone to teach me, and that didn't happen. So, it's just, it's hard. It's just hard. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know that there's an answer, but I do feel like there is a subset of people with kids that are teens that, really don't have a place to fit, and don't have an outlet for real life stuff that goes on, and you kind of feel out of place, I guess would be it. And so, there's a lot of churches here that, a lot of young kids go, like, they're like young kids, like kids in their 20s, women and families in their 20s with little kids. It's like, that's, we don't fit there, but we also don't fit in, when their kids are out of college and they're not dealing with these things. So it's just a tough age to be. And I know, like, my mom struggles with this now. She can't physically go to church because she's home with my dad, who's homebound. And, she feels like she's left out of different parts of ministry where nobody really checks on her. Nobody makes sure, she does have a wonderful small group that she is able to attend, but, she feels left out by the church in general. Because, being a caregiver is another demographic of people that is really, really hard, and nobody supports you, and nobody, is there to talk about the bad days. And, some days are bad days as a parent, where you are yelling at your kids and you feel terrible about yourself, and you say stuff you shouldn't, and you feel like a bad parent. And, I've never heard a sermon talk about this stuff. It's just, and to be truthful, I'm assuming most of you are going to be mothers that are listening to me. To be truthful, our pastors are men. They don't understand what it's like to be a mother. They don't understand what it's like to worry about your kids, like us moms do. They don't understand the pressure of trying to be a good wife, trying to be a good mother, trying to work, trying to build a business, trying to be successful. And, these are the things where as I get more and more successful, it becomes something where you're almost judged in the Christian circle of, really a mom's place is at home. There's this whole, generation of women now that are trying to homestead, and the mother's place is home, and that's where they should be. And you should raise your kids and you should be home. And, that's what the Bible says. But that's not what I want to do. I can still be a good mom and not be home with my children 24/7, because if I did, I would not be a good mom. I'm a better mom because of what I do. And I think we, need to do a better job of telling our women that your job is not to grow up and serve a man and to find a husband. Like, how many people I know that their husband has passed away or they've gotten a divorce and they have no job, they have a no job history, and now they have to provide for their family. So, to me, some of these archaic biblical things that come from men are not today's truths. And we have to pivot and we have to speak to the trends of now. And yes, I know everyone tries to do that. I know they try to speak to, but they don't know how to speak, to women that are hardworking and successful and trying to be better and make more money. And, you feel bad because you feel like, well, I shouldn't want materialistic things. We need to not be materialistic. We need to play small, and we need to be not who we are, and, be quiet and be subservient. And that is not me. And there is a whole subset of us women who are Christian women who want to make a lot of money, who want to provide for their family, who want to do a lot of good and travel and speak and do all these things. But it's just not the norm, and it's not out there. It's just not something that, we should be raising our daughters to, want to go out and want to, be some sort of, I don't know that you necessarily have to be a pastor, but to empower people and to, love the Lord. But you can also be a really awesome person and do really amazing things and be really successful. And that is still, if that's God's will for you, maybe that is what God wants for you. And if you tell them to play small and be subservient and be a wife and stay home with their kids, they are not reaching the people that they need to reach. And I think that was part of this podcast, was just me stepping outside my comfort zone and talking about the things that live deep down inside me that frustrate me. And, I want to be a person that, speaks stuff that nobody else will talk about, and, say the things that are hard, and to be that person that's like, she's right. She's so right. This makes sense. This is totally me. I totally get her. And so if this isn't you, and you have a wonderful, supportive, church home and somewhere to, be and be supportive, I'm so happy for you. But until I find a place where, I'm supported for being me, and I'm supported for being the woman who I am, that has, grown children and a full-time job. And, I like to, have a cocktail every once in a while. And I like to do, these things, but I also want a deeper relationship with the Lord. And I know I have to work on that on my own, and I'm trying. But it's hard when you don't know how. And so, a lot of the books and things that I've read are geared towards stay-at-home moms, which is a labor of love for sure. For all of you who stay at home, I could not do that job. But I also can't relate to that because I don't stay home. So I need somebody that speaks to me as a woman who is trying her hardest to be the very best mom, be the very best wife, be the very best chiropractor, be the very best podcast host that she can. And sometimes it's overwhelming and it's hard. And I don't know where to turn, and I don't know what to look for, and I don't know how to support myself. And you need to read, you need to meditate, you need to pray, you need to we just need to know how, and we just need to be supportive, and we need to be loved for the strong, independent, outgoing women that we are. And we also need to support our teens. We will never bring these kids to the Lord with the way things are now. And I don't know the answer, but I know that a lot of times what I've seen is not working now. And these kids are moving further and further away with their relationship with the Lord. And so, how do you make Christianity cool? How do you make them, kids with trauma, kids that come from divorced homes, kids that aren't in poverty? We're talking just regular, normal kids, not under, I know you see that where they're going out to underprivileged neighborhoods and putting all this money into underprivileged neighborhoods. And there are kids in our regular community that are not underprivileged that still need our help because they are dealing with a lot of issues in their daily life that they don't know how to handle. And so I would love your feedback. I would love for you all to reach out to me to, just tell me if you feel the same way, if you agree, if you have a really good resource for me. I would love that. I would love to, read a book or do whatever, send me a podcast. I would love that. So if you felt this resonated with you, if you have a friend that maybe feels this way too, share this podcast. It just helps me. It just helps us reach more people. It helps us all feel not so alone in the way that we feel, in the way that we sometimes, hide things. So yeah, this was my unscripted rambling, but I felt like it was something I had to get off my heart. And I would just love to hear back from you guys, and would just love to hear what you would like to hear more from me about. I hope you have a great day and more episodes to come. So see you next time.